And so what we'll do is if you introduce yourself a little bit about the business and the background of the business, and then I will actually ask you, if that's okay, some of the most frequently questions that asked questions that I get asked over Instagram and on the blog as well. And I think sometimes it's just easier for people to watch a video than it is to try and read a blog. So over to you, Rob.
Okay, so my name's Rob Fiddes. I'm the 4th generation. You can probably see behind me there's a few pictures of the previous generations there, working from 1900 through to my grandfather in the 50s, my father in the 70s, and all the way through to me at the end in there
you are, yeah.
87, I think I came in. So I've been doing it a fair few years now. And we originally manufactured paints from 1900, distempers and lyes over in Bristol. And then we moved over to Cardiff and started manufacturing there from the sort of 50s through post-war. Really, it was French polishes and glazes. Carried on with the paints for the joinery, and then went through to the 60s and 70s, doing a lot more sort of lacquers and cellulose-based products that we still do now for kitchen manufacturers and furniture and film sets and various other markets. And then we went on to manufacturing of safe wax, which was a very low-smelling wax, which sort of took the country by storm because the major competitor was a very high-smelling wax and quite dangerous. So, yeah, we moved on to that, and it really, boosted our business right up, and we invested all the profits back into it. And unfortunately, we had a fire then in '97, which took 70% of our business away. Right at the point where the wax was just tailing off and IKEA was coming in. And then from then on, we rebuilt the factory in 18 months and started manufacturing parquet flooring, hard wax oils, that sort of thing. As we saw one market disappearing, another market was growing, where carpets are going out and wood floors coming in. So that's really where we are now. We're carrying on.
Excellent. Oh, so I love a story like that. It's just brilliant. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for giving us an insight into the business and how you are there today. And it's a family business, which is just, I love it. I just love it. So let's get cracking with some of the questions that I get asked quite often in terms of wooden worktops. And the first question, again, I get this quite a lot, is people who've bought a house and they've inherited a worktop that needs a little bit of tender, loving care, and they've the people potentially before haven't looked after it very well, and it's gone black, spotty, especially around the sink area. What should they do?
Well, the first sort of rule of doing anything like this is do no harm. So you need to clean that down as far as possible with just using, a normal cleaner, a non-abrasive cleaner, one with no bleach in it. So don't touch the finish with the bleach. If it's got a lacquer on it, it's not so bad. But if it's got an oil on it or something that is to be slightly less durable, I wouldn't use that. Yeah. So just try and wash it down with warm water and a normal spray cleaner to start with, non-abrasive, and see what happens. If the marks are still there, then they're in the wood and the surface is probably broken down. And the black you're seeing is anaerobic, which means it's basically fungus. So it's rotting the wood from the inside. So what you really need to do there is take the surface off and then bleach those black marks out if you can't sand them. And the way to bleach them out, once you've sanded it down, is use hydrogen peroxide, which obviously we manufacture and sell. Or you can use Domestos, which you might have in the house as well.
Oh, really? You could use Domestos? Gosh, right.
Use Domestos, just to try. It's a weaker form, but it may work. And obviously then neutralize that down. You can probably see it going whiter once you've applied it after about 20 minutes. And then neutralize that with bicarb soda, which you've probably got in the cupboard as well for baking and such. Yeah. And then on top of that, wash down very, very well with any vinegar that you've got as well, acetic acid or normal Sarson's vinegar if you've got that in the cupboard. Then wash it down again, leave it to dry and see what the finish is like. Sand it, and then you start the building process again on using probably a better finish like the hard wax oil, more durable.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. There's quite a process there, isn't there? So maybe I'll put that into a blog so that people can to follow that one. So if you talked about the process of preparing it for the next the next level, which is putting the better hard wax oil on top. So one of the questions I get asked, and this is actually, I'd like to know this answer for myself as well, is what grade of sandpaper should people be using on their worktops so that they don't get that horrible grainy look, especially if you're using an electric sander. If you use the wrong and you push too hard, you get those horrible lines, don't you? So what sort of...
Well, it depends on with an orbital sander. You've got to be very careful with that, because you will see the little pig's tails, we call them, as you sand off. So it's always better to sand where you can with the grain. So if you use a belt sander, it can be a better way of doing it if you're not used to it, because if you lean into an orbital, sometimes you'll get the dig in and then you get the whirl and swirl. So ideally, just try sanding, not necessarily with an orbital, just try sanding it off normally. Wrap the sandpaper around a block of wood and go with the grain. Using about a 150 grit if you can. If it's not coming off, go down to a sort of 120, then that's coarse. So you need to then take that back up to a 150. And that's when you should start looking to finish the wood at about 150. No need to go any finer than that.
Okay? No. Okay, perfect. I suppose if you're doing a whole work surface, then you're probably going to be wanting to use one of the more the ones that do it for you, if you like, more of an electric one. But then at the end, maybe using those the wood to finish it off potentially.
The pressure on, if you use it's the pressure on the orbital sander you've got to watch. You're getting the swirl marks because you're leaning right into it. So let the sander do the job. Don't put too much pressure on it. And make sure it's not toffeeing the paper. So turn the sander over and look and see if there's any toffee on the paper. That means that you're probably going in a bit hard on it. Just try and take the surface off and let it come down gradually. Okay.
And I suppose allow yourself plenty of time to do it and be patient, which is what I'm very bad at. You just want to get it done as quickly as possible, but if you do it wrong in the long run, you're going to get those marks and it's not going to look good, is it? Brilliant. Okey-doke. Right, I get asked this a lot, Rob. So can I use Fiddes Hard Wax Oil directly over other oils like Osmo and other ones that are the oils that you would use more regularly? You put them on, don't you, quite often, whereas the hard wax oil is on. Once it's dried, it's on and it's done.
That's right. The difference between a normal oil that goes on a worktop is it doesn't tend to oxidize and dry. It penetrates well, but you have to keep doing it. So it's not as durable as an oxidizing oil, which is what this is. It actually film forms slightly, which means that you have that extra durability to scuff and mar, we call it, and resistance to liquids, and the fact that it's EN71, so it's child safe as well. So in my view, that you should try and fill the grain and put something on there which is going to repel and bead the water, but for a longer period of time. Then you'll avoid the black spots, because you've actually got some film on there which is oxidized hard. So I would say, definitely with the hard wax oils and the hard wax against the traditional oil, you do get that extra durability using it. And you won't have to do it as often.
No. But you can't put Fiddes Hard Wax Oil straight on top of it, can you? You have to sand it all off. Yeah,
you have to get rid of any previous finishes, as it states on the tin and the website, and even on our t-shirts. You can't put anything on top because it just won't adhere. You'll get delamination, which is when the surface peels up, and it won't dry either. If you haven't removed any of the previous finish, it won't dry, and you'll know. So all that old finish comes off. So you can either strip it if it's wax with a reviver or methylated spirits and fine wire wool, or a Scotch-Brite, which is better, because you don't get the wire wool in your fingers and in an oak, which can go black. Okay, so there's a little tip there. So, or you sand it off, but make sure all the old or previous finish is removed.
Brilliant. Okie doke. How many coats should I apply?
Well, that depends on the substrate. If it's a really tight grain, like a maple or a sycamore or ash or anything really tight, then 2 coats. You want to try and keep the finish as far as possible, as close to the wood as you can. If it's soft wood, I'd probably go 3 on it, depending again, if it's pitch pine, it's tight, it's oily anyway, so it keeps that finish up. And on hardwood, I'd go 2. It very much depends on what finish you want. But no more than 3. Okay.
So on an oak like mine, you would suggest how many?
On oak, well, like yours, I'd probably go 2 coats on there. It depends if you're putting it on.
Good answer. Excellent.
Film weight as well. If you go too heavy on film weight when you're applying, you can actually, you can apply the equivalent of probably 4 coats. So try and get that thin coat going on, okay? 20 square meters per litre, but try and knock it down. So measure the countertops and work out what you should be putting on, okay?
That leads me on to my next question. How would you suggest people apply the oil to the wood?
People apply it in many different ways. I think on a floor, Australian distributors and the trades out there, they tend to apply it with a roller, whereas over here people don't, not so much with a roller. They tend to use a brush. So I would always tend towards a brush for a worktop, and probably a roller for a floor, or a floor brush for a floor. And even it out like that with a brush, brushing those marks out. Don't leave that brush mark in there. You can work it out. As soon as the brush starts pulling, you know it's drying, and then you move on to the next part.
Brilliant. What should I use to buff the wax once it's dried?
I like the hard wax oil without anything being put on top. So once it's dried hard and cured, which takes about 2 weeks to cure hard, it's feel dry initially, but to get to maximum strength, you need about 14 days of curing, we call it. And then just go back on it, because there's wax in it anyway, and it's durable. You need to bring out the wax by buffing it. And don't put anything on top of it, because that will A, slow the curing time, like a normal wax polish, slow the curing time down. And B, you put another film on top, which is less durable than the film you got underneath. So you're counteracting what you've done in the first place. So just leave the hard wax oil do its job and buff with a lint-free cloth.
Brilliant. Okie doke. How should I and what should I use to clean my work surfaces after I've applied the oil?
I would use on the work surface, I'd use the wood surface cleaner, which is that product there. I'd use that. I think that works really, really well. It's a spray, so you don't put too much on. And
I've got some too. I use it all the time. I love it.
All right, so I'd use that to clean it down. Again, don't use any Mr. Muscle or whatever else you've got in the cupboard, because any bleachers or abrasive cleaners will break the surface down.
And Zoflora is a no. Don't use Zoflora. I've had a few people message me, and bleach obviously, but Zoflora people putting too much heavier concentrate in their water, and then it's taking the oil off. So again, can I use bleach to clean my work surfaces now that I've treated them? No, we've just covered that. Will the wax change the colour of my worktops dramatically? And people have asked me quite a lot what colour I went for, and I went for the this one, which is the clear semi-gloss. But that didn't change it because it's clear. Obviously, tell us because there are quite a few different colours, aren't there?
There are. Yeah, we also do tinted hard wax oils as well.
Yes.
Which has got the colour in the hard wax oil, so we can actually change it. And it doesn't strike the wood as much, so it will keep the grain quite natural anyhow, although you're throwing a tint into it. If you really want a darker colour, then you'd use a light fast water stain or something else underneath a clear finish. What we tend to do is you say that's the most popular finish. I know you use the semi-gloss, but the satin seems to be the most popular finish that we do.
Okay.
Long way, it's about 80% of the sales in its entirety, and that's in clear. So we've got, a dozen or so tinted hard wax oils, but satin clear takes up 80% of our entire sales, which is
What's the difference between what I've got here, which is the clear semi-gloss, and the satin? What is it?
That's about a 55% sheen level, and that's gone to about a 65. So it's
so it's shinier. Mine's shinier than.
And some people like a slightly matte. I mean, we sell a lot of matte finishes to Western Europe, so Belgium, a lot of greys, a lot of mattes, because that's what's popular on their flooring over there. But on work surfaces, it's mostly satin or your semi-gloss.
Excellent. So are you doing samples that people can order to
do the 5ml sachets? Yeah, we do the little 5ml sachets that people can order online. They're not like little tomato ketchup sachets really, and they squeeze that out, and then they can. They've got the colour in front of them.
Brilliant.
That's proved really popular actually.